Hey Sam, I watched a video of your appearing on the television talking about gun control and gun rights, an interview in which you adverted to your blog article on the same issue, and I've been meaning to lodge my complaint with you, but I've been busy. Allow me to do that here. Before I get to the meat of the complaint, let me set up my particular perspective where I'm coming from here. I'm not saying this to garner any kind of authority in what I say. It's just to put you on notice of who you're dealing with. I'm former federal law enforcement. I'm former military. I'm protected under 18 U.S.C. 926C, 18 U.S.C. 111, 18 U.S.C. 1114. There are particular provisions written into the federal code that protect people like me in such a way that it does because of antecedent decisions and antecedent conditions we've had in our lives that require us to have a care for our safety in a way that maybe other people would not. It is pursuant to my work, as I mentioned, being a federal officer, 28 CFR 60.3. Okay? That's just to set this out. I'm almost always armed. Everywhere I go, pretty much, I'm armed. I have particular security concerns to deal with that I don't care to delineate here, but they're related to certain arrests and investigations participated in the past and concerns about some of the not entirely nice people wanting to track me down. So no matter what laws you pass or what laws you agitate for, draconian as they may be, I will not be affected by them. We're exempted from a lot of this by federal law. States don't have any choice but to say, well, okay. Nevertheless, I am a citizen of these United States, and my brother, my sister, my countrymen, they should not be subjected to these draconian impositions on their freedoms simply because they didn't make the same career choices that I made. I'm very much opposed to most of the new iteration of gun control laws that are being bandied about hither and thither. And we'll come on to that sharply, but let's get to your interview. Again, I do point this out not as a matter of authority, just to give you an idea of who you're dealing with respect to my perspective.
This is a very difficult issue to make sense on because...
Actually, this is a very easy subject to make sense on. It's a very difficult subject to sound like you're making sense to people who have an ideological fixity, and to people who refuse to be constrained by facts, and who are free and loose with the facts, in the same way that you are. And I hate to say this because I do admire much of your work, but on this particular topic, I'm sorry, sir, you have a reckless disregard for facts. And we'll look at some very discrete claims you've made that are very trivially easy to prove absolutely false.
Even the most rabid haters of guns, I mean, people who would argue for a gun ban, have many good points on their side, and even the gun nuts have many good points on their side. And when you try
You're
to...
saying the gun nuts have good points?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right
I hope
there is going to upset some people, but let's
So it just does not break out neatly, and when you connect all these truths, you don't actually...
I would just like to point out for people, he's made a couple of assertions, and now he's talking about them as other truths. The truths of these assertions that he's thrown out, the truth has not been demonstrated. It's just been stated, and now it's being received as true. Watch out when people do that.
Get a policy that is workable in this country, and you just piss off everyone on both sides. So that's essentially what I did in my blog post. And
right.
The problem with...
I can tell you why you pissed off people like me in your blog post. In fact, I'm going to read the first paragraph to you, first paragraph, or two paragraphs, I don't remember, I have it down. And I'm going to point out a lot of the loaded things that you've built in there that are trivially false.
The liberals are right in that we obviously have a huge problem with guns. We've got 300 million guns on the ground. We've got...
You'll have to draw the connection there. The liberals are right that we have a problem with guns because there exist 300 million guns in the country. The one thing does not logically follow from the other, so you've got to do something that connects the two. Remember, well, there weren't 300 million back in the day. And the British, by the way, and by the British I don't mean the colonialists, I mean overseas, they thought there was a bit of a problem with our having firearms, too. And if you know your history, you will know that the event which precipitated the Revolutionary War was the actions by General Thomas Gage when he marched to Lexington and Concord to seize the what? The firearms of the colonialists there.
30,000 people dying every year who would not be dying but for the presence of...
Now that is an empirical claim, sir. I would love to see your data that in the United States, if it were true that there were not these 300 million guns, those 30,000 people would remain alive. That is a claim that you cannot possibly demonstrate as true. And yet, there you are, throwing it out there, asserting it as though it is some fact that just cannot be argued with.
So guns make violence more lethal, they make suicide more effective and arguably more tempting, so...
Really? Suicide more effective and arguably more tempting. We'll come back to that.
It's from looked at from the UK or Australia or Japan, the solution is obvious.
UK, Australia, Japan, okay.
Get rid of the guns. I mean, and our fascination with the
By the way, I would just like to point out, I'm an American citizen. I don't live in any of those countries. They are free to arrange their societies however they would like. They can be sheep all they would like. They can be as militant as they would like. Whatever. It's not my problem. It's their country. It's for them to work out. All I ask in return is that they butt out of our internal affairs. The British agreed a couple of hundred years ago to do that. Well, some of them, they did send Pierce Morgan back over, so I guess we didn't. It wasn't a complete victory, but anyway.
An amendment just looks like masochistic stupidity. It's just that there is this religious attachment to the Second Amendment is
Religious attachment to the Second Amendment. That is to say that in the United States there is one thing that's called the supreme law of the land, which no state or government in the country is free to disregard. And unless and until that provision of the Constitution is excised, or the government is relieved from its responsibility of adhering to it, it is obligatory, and a person is perfectly entitled to say, hey, government, you may not do that under any circumstances or under these circumstances because it says so right here. See? And you're aware of this. The Second Amendment to the Constitution is still in force. It's not a religious-like adherence. It's merely pointing out this is what the law is. And so long as this is the law, which governs all other laws, no other law that you make can contradict it. Every other law that you make in contravention of this amendment must fall. I could easily just throw it back your way and say, oh, you have a religious-like affiliation with freedom of speech and voting rights, and oh my God, the rights of women or blacks. It's just stupid to say it.
People killed year after year after year. So you can pass all of those regulations. I'm for everything that gun control advocates want. I'm actually for more. I think it should be like getting a pilot's license. I think you should require training to get a license to have a gun. So, but...
And that's what it sounds like when idiots are watching something. So you want to make access to a constitutional right contingent on some kind of process that is as stringent and difficult as getting a pilot's license. Fine, I like this, Sam. Let's do that. Let's do this with some of your favorite amendments. Let's do it with the first. To get a license to speak in public, you have to be trained. And it's going to have to be training that's just as good or just as rigorous as what one would expect of a pilot. Same too with voting rights. I mean, God, do you know what happens if you let a lot of stupid people vote? They vote in stupid people who make stupid decisions, and we wind up with a $7 trillion debt fighting some goofy wars that didn't need to be fought. So let's just put a poll tax in there to make sure, one, that they're contributing to the society with the tax funds that are going to be spent for these things that they want, and then two, let's put in some education requirements to make sure they're literate enough. But I'm sure you as a liberal will oppose that for all of the obvious reasons. Similarly, abortion rights. You have to be trained at this level of getting a pilot's license before you can apply for permission to get an abortion. It might take a year or two to process that permit, but, you know, well, bureaucracy's for the better good. Okay, so let's revisit your silliness about guns making, or suicide being reduced, or arguably, whatever you said. Japan, Australia, United Kingdom, the places you cited. Japan has it's 10th in the world for suicides, at 21.7 per 100,000 residents. The United States is 33rd in the world at 12 residents per 100,000. The UK has beat us. They're 37 in the world at 11.8 people per 100,000 residents. Australia beats us slightly again by 2 whole people per 100,000. They're at 10. Curiously enough, Turkey, 3.62 suicides per 100,000 residents, 9 million guns there, 74 million people in the population. Syria, 0.1 suicide per person. Pakistan, 1.1 suicide per person. These are places in the world that abound with private firearms in the hands of private citizens. So when you say it's arguably something that increases the likelihood of suicide, it seems that what you mean by arguably is if you ignore the overwhelming number of countries that have high access to guns and extremely low suicide rates. Okay, so to your article, you write, fanaticists and zealots can be found on both sides of the debate over guns in America. On the one hand, many gun rights advocates reject even the most sensible restrictions on the sale of weapons to the public. This is false. What you mean to say here, what you should have said if you were trying to be honest is, on the one hand, Many current gun rights advocates reject even the most sensible to me sounding new restrictions on the sale of. Okay, I know that this is a logical scheme that you accept because I've seen you do this to demonstrate the veracity of the Monty Hall problem. Instead of dealing with the 3 doors, let's just put up thousands of doors and knock them all down except for that remaining one, and then the choice becomes clear, remaining 2, whatever it was. There are hundreds, if not thousands upon thousands of laws on firearms in the United States which almost all gun rights advocates accept. Pretty much just as a given. There are a few who agitate against them, but not many. What you're saying here is that when you say a gun rights advocate is not, rejects even the most sensible restrictions on the sale of, what you're saying is, except for all of the ones they do accept. Let's say there are 25,000 of them already. Say there are. Well, I want to propose laws 25,001 through 25,015. And oh my God, these people are opposing my wanting to pass into law these mere 15 provisions. They're just overwhelmingly resisting sensible regulations. If you ignore the 25,000 that are antecedent to it, which they don't have much problem with. This is just dishonest on your part, I have to say, or an indicator of naivety, an unwillingness to actually analyze the structure of what you're wanting to argue. Okay. Also, you need to draw a distinction. You're conflating here sensible from sensible sounding. The fact that something is sensible sounding does not actually mean that it is sensible. You should know this working in science. Much of the world is actually quite counterintuitive. The same too is true with gun control and gun rights, with firearms, for instance. It is a received wisdom for some stupid reason among the general population and people who like to bloviate about this and pretend they know something, that a ban on automatic weapons is a good thing. They apparently have never taken an algebra class, let alone something more sophisticated than algebra class, like an introductory calculus class. Their complaint is that these guns shoot a lot of bullets in a short amount of time. Yes, that has an implication. You burn through your ammo in a much shorter period of time. And after the firearm is out of rounds, you have a very fancy boomstick that you can use as a paperweight or something to swat people with. There's a reason that the military, whose expertise on killing people one should actually not just dismiss out of hand. There's a reason the United States military got rid of hand-carried, non-crew served, fully automatic weaponry, with a couple of exceptions. The reason being is that your kill to bullets fired ratio is exceedingly low. It was not uncommon, not unheard of, for entire battles to break out and for forces to deplete all of their ammunition and kill precisely no one, hurt no one. Because there are certain factors that go into shooting, which I know you go to a range and shoot quite often. I'm just going to tell you, when you put a bead on an actual person and you get the quickening that comes with the report at the moment of truth, it's slightly different. When you get into these hostile situations where your decision-making process is not, am I going to have to kill someone, but who do I have to kill first and how quickly, your adrenaline comes up. You get tunnel vision. Your reasoning faculties are diminished. You're a neuroscientist, you should know this. Your hands shake. Automatic weapons are harder to fire on a good day. They become more difficult when you're already shaking and scared. And you're not having the mental resources available to remind you, oh, let off the trigger, let off the trigger, let off the trigger. You don't want to run out of ammo too quickly. Even with semi-automatic weapons, you can go to ranges and watch people in pretty stressful situations when they're being drilled. They will forget to stop shooting. They will just keep shoot until they're out of ammunition. And the instructor's standing there going, hey, Fluffy, why did you run out of bullets? I wasn't paying attention. Congratulations, you're dead, and now so too are your teammates. Go run 15 miles. They do this in the SEALs, they do it in the Rangers. Well, not the 50 miles, but it's a problem that happens a lot. And these are professional soldiers. Their sole purpose in life is to be very competent infantry, to be extremely good at shooting, and even they can't remember it. The military gets a bum rap for being stupid, because it has written on devices things like a Claymore mine, front towards enemy. The reason things are written like that isn't because the people in the military are retarded. It's because your reasoning processes diminish dramatically when you're being shot, when you've been shot, when you're being shot at, when your friend's been blown up next to you. That's not a time where you need to be sitting here thinking, concave out or concave in, I can't recall. Well, I'll just wing it. These little aids are put there because when they become useful is when rounds are incoming. Anyway, back to the automatic thing. If someone is going to go into a movie theater and start shooting, which is going to happen, these guns are not going away. It's going to happen. I would much prefer that they expend all of their ammunition in a couple of seconds rather than having an inbuilt mechanism that the military also institutes to slow down the rate of fire so as to improve the lethality of the platform. It increases the accuracy, and it builds in a mechanism that defeats the person's failing to remember, stop shooting. They have to do something each time they want that weapon to fire. And then they have the 3-round burst built into it for area of effect. Now there are such things as called crew-served weapons. It's a little bit different because those are entrenched, they're set down, they're pretty stable, and you can control those much better. But even the accuracy on those is quite low. You're going to fire your bullet to dead person ratio, your bullet to injured person ratio is going to go up dramatically. There's a reason that you hear people storming beaches and they get to talk about the so-called zipper gun. If the zipper guns were terribly accurate, these people wouldn't be talking about it. Okay, so that was a first sentence. On the other hand, proponents of stricter gun laws often seem unable to understand why a good person would ever want ready access to a loaded firearm. There are some people like that. Between these two extremes, we must find grounds for rational discussion about the problem of gun violence. Well, you could start by getting your facts right and being quite precise in what you're claiming rather than this very free and loose, works in Palo Alto kind of language. Here you're talking about either depriving people of the ability to defend themselves. You talk about this being a discussion where people get killed. You're right. If someone like you had prevailed some years ago, or some of your friends in this discussion had prevailed in the early 90s, someone like me might well have been dead. But I'm alive because, well, body armor for one, and for two, my skill with a firearm. I have been shooting since I was 5 years old. When I draw a bead on someone, I don't miss. I've practiced all of my life. Unlike you go out every couple of months to the range because you feel it's your responsibility as a gun owner. I think it's prudent given the fact that given the purpose for which I own firearms, and I've always had firearms. Protection. If I can't shoot something, it's not a very good protection device. It's good for a distraction, but once those bullets run out, all I'm left doing is running around with my arms a-flailing. Anyway, unlike most Americans, oh, you get to be different. Snowflake. I stand on both sides of this debate. I understand the apprehension that many people feel toward gun culture, and I share their outrage over the political influence of the National Rifle Association. How is it that we live in a society in which one of the most compelling interests is gun ownership? It's because you live in a country that, but for the private ownership of firearms, would not exist. I'm sorry if you forgot that. Okay, where is the science lobby, the safe food lobby? I cannot believe you really asked this stupid question. Or actually, these stupid questions. Here's an idea, Sam. To lobby for something is just to try to persuade politicians to do something in your favor. But here, when you talk about lobbying, you think of only private actors, private organizations like the NRA. You forget about the alphabet soup of government agencies that are created explicitly explicitly to lobby the Congress for more and more resources to meet whatever it is that they're after. So think about the Wiley Act with Upton Sinclair's The Jungle and how that led to what's currently now the FDA. The NIH budget, $30 billion per year. NASA, $16.9 billion. NSF, $7.6. FDA, $4.65 billion. CDC, $11.3. How much more science advocacy, science lobbying do you think this country requires? I know it's an important topic, sir. It is not the most important thing that has ever existed. There are other things you have to deal with in a society than just research and just making the new, best, latest technological gizmo whiz-bang. By the way, you don't need to start talking about start pondering about the science thing. Read the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 clearly lays out that provision. Alrighty. I think I'm going to end it there and just let everybody have a great night because I need to get to bed. Old age and all. Have a great day.